those fantastic flying fools bring you the laugh time, the love time of your lifetime. See the greatest of comedy talent in the biggest entertainment invention of the century. Burl Ives, Troy Donahue, Daliah Lavi, Gert Frobe, and Terry Thomas in The Lovemaking is the wackiest, the biggest entertainment invention of the century. Those fantastic flying fools.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're gonna catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're gonna make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
This is the American International Podcast. I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
And this week we're going to blast off with Those Fantastic Flying Fools from 1967.
Those Fantastic Flying Fools, which was also released under the title Blast Off,
thus the pun,
is the Americanized version of Jules Verne's Rocket to the Moon, a British film. They were all directed by Dom Sharp, from a screenplay by Dave Freeman, based on an original story by Peter Welbeck, which is a pseudonym for Harry Alan Towers, and this was inspired by the writings of Jules Verne. The film was produced by Harry Alan Towers for Jules Verne Films Limited and distributed by American International Pictures.
I think that's the most you've ever had to say while introducing the crew of a movie. Those Fantastic Flying Fools stars Burl Ives as Phineas T. Barnum, Troy Donahue as Gaylord Sullivan, Gert Frobe as Professor Siegfried von Bulow, Hermione Gingold as Angelica, Lionel Jeffries as Sir Charles Dillworthy, Dennis Price as the Duke of Barset, Daliah Lavi as Madelaine, Terry Thomas as Captain Sir Harry Washington Smythe, Stratford Johns as Royal Engineer Sergeant, Graham Starke as Bertram Grundle.
Also appearing are Renata Holt as Anna Lindstrom, Jimmy Clitheroe as General Tom Thumb, Judy Cornwell as Lady Electra, Joaquin Teague as Joaquin Bulgaroff, Edward D'Souza as Henri, Joan Sterndale Bennett as Queen Victoria, Alan Cuthbertson as Colonel Scutling, Hugh Walters as Carruthers, Derek Francis as Puddleby, and Anthony Woodruff as the announcer.
And Those Fantastic Flying Fools blast off with fancy credits over a fanfare medley. There are so many fonts in these credits. Everyone gets their own. And the copy that we watched has Blast Off as the title credit.
Right, before we get into this, I guess we should explain the domestic Blu-ray release through Olive Films, released under the title Blast Off, is the full, nearly 2-hour version of the film and has the title card of Those Fantastic Flying Fools. For this episode, we went back to the original VHS release of Blast Off. Again, this was titled Blast Off, with the title card Blast Off. But depending upon how you see this, you might even see Jules Verne's Rocket to the Moon as your title.
And the runtimes vary widely between all three movies.
The US theatrical version runs about 95 minutes. That seems to be the version streaming on Amazon Prime currently, at least according to the runtime. I haven't checked that. And that's the version that was on the VHS that we watched.
Whereas the original is closer to 2 hours long.
As the film opens, a narrator tells us this is an age where science has blossomed and innovation is everywhere. And this is presented to us as the Duke of Barset is being commended by Queen Victoria for being good with science.
Apparently he's going to be the first person in England to have his home entirely lit by electric light. No more gas lights for him. After he cranks up the generator, he allows the Queen herself to pull the lever that turns on the electricity. However, something goes wrong.
Sparks fly and the house is evacuated and is quickly engulfed in flames. The narrator says that fired by the enthusiasm, Victorians further pursued their scientific innovations. And next we had the grand opening of the Trent Suspension Bridge.
This was built by Sir Charles Dillworthy.
Again, Queen Victoria is on hand to commend Dillworthy. She cuts the ribbon and the bridge collapses.
Apparently that ribbon was the only thing holding it together. It's just a bunch of concrete blocks piled on top of each other. It's like she pulled out the bottom piece in a Jenga game. Everything falls to the ground.
So Sir Charles Dillworthy, played by Lionel Jeffries, who we remember as Inspector Willoughby in Whoever Slew Annie Rue, realizes what his problem is.
Well, the narrator tells us that this calamity is the fault of Dillworthy's partner, Captain Sir Harry Washington Smythe, who is a public works contractor amongst his other accomplishments.
And played by Terry Thomas, who we remember from both Fives films.
And different roles in both. He's not concerned with the bridge at this moment. He's watching his manservant, associate, demonstrate his new invention, magnetic pool pockets.
Yeah, it's a cheating device that's installed into a billiard table.
All Smythe has to do is swap out the regular balls with metal balls, shoot them in the general vicinity of the pocket, and it goes right in, rather obviously by means other than natural force.
Grundle, the man who's installed this device, won't accept a personal check from Smythe because Smythe has a reputation. So Smythe offers his gold watch as payment. As he hands it over to Grundle, the watch flies out of his hand and into the left corner pocket of the pool table.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was a gold-plated watch.
So in the next scene, we're with Professor von Bulow. He's played by Gert Frobe, who didn't have any other AIP credits, but is probably better known today as Goldfinger.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. He's demonstrating the effectiveness of his cannon helmet. He turns one of those silly spikes that Germans had on their helmets into a working cannon.
He's demonstrating it for the Kaiser. He pushes it down into the general direction he wants to shoot, looks in that direction, so it's pointed correctly, and the small cannon on top of his head goes off.
Yeah, the first shot hits the mark. He blows up some small building, but also reveals a very obvious flaw in the design. The cannon can only be used once, and then it explodes. Now we're on to America.
Here we see P.T. Barnum, played by Burl Ives, leading a meeting with potential investors.
They're going to invest in the greatest show on earth, which is the only thing I ever knew P.T. Barnum for. Oh, and that one quote.
All seems to be going well when a teletype machine starts up. The investors have never seen anything like this, and they're interested. They read the message that is coming through, and it states that Barnum's show has completely burned to the ground, and he's being advised to leave the country immediately. The investors turn to face him, but Barnum is already out the door.
He's not only out the door, he has locked them in so he can make his getaway, which he does by hopping on a boat headed for England with his associate General Tom Thumb. Now we return to England, where we see the inventors and architects we've already met assembling for a meeting of the Royal Society for the Advancement of Science. Barset, Dillworthy, and other scientists are present. They're mingling outside the conference room when Barset sees P.T. Barnum and goes to introduce himself. He is the president of the society.
The Duke of Barset invites the two of them to the lecture, which is about to start. So they go in, and Professor von Bulow is already speaking. He has a theory about how to fire a projectile into the air and onto the moon.
But P.T. Barnum seems to be taking him seriously. He stands up and asks von Bulow for more information, such as how will you fire this projectile?
With a cannon, says the professor matter-of-factly. This brings sneers and laughter from those present. He goes on to say, a really big cannon.
Then the laughs get louder until Barset makes them all quiet down.
Barnum then asks if this projectile could accommodate a man. Yes, says the professor, if he were a very small man. Barnum looks down at General Tom Thumb, seated next to him, who has fallen asleep.
He didn't want to go to a lecture in the first place.
Barnum says that at first he thought his invitation here had been by mistake, but now he feels the hand of Providence has brought him here. He goes to the stage. And who will join me in this adventure in sending a man to the moon? Dillworthy is the first to say yes. The Duke of Barset is second. Then Professor Bulow.
And eventually the whole room agrees.
Barnum announces their quest to send a man to the moon. He receives a standing ovation, and General Tom Thumb wakes up and joins in.
In the next scene, we see that the news has hit the papers. A newsboy reads off the headline, which says, P.T. Barnum is going to the moon! ! Not only that, but the news has reached the Kaiser in Germany. Upon hearing that von Bulow is going to the moon, he shouts, good. Then we see that he has tried that helmet cannon, and it looks much the worse for the experience.
Now we cut away elsewhere, and we see a woman dressed in bride's clothes running from a house. She's shouting, Gaylord, you must not go to the moon. As for Gaylord, he's prepping a hot air balloon. Gaylord says he's not going to the moon. He's merely going over the channel to England. He's been working on his own theories on how to get to the moon, and if Barnum and company are going to be successful, Gaylord wants to take part. Besides, why does she care? She's marrying another man.
He declares that the first ship to land on the moon will be designed by Gaylord Sullivan. Madelaine declares her love for Gaylord, who asks why she's marrying Henri. Madelaine says she loves both of them, but Henri is richer, so she proposes that she marry Henri, but spend her afternoons with Gaylord. Gaylord is appalled. He hasn't heard of ethical non-monogamy yet.
Gaylord holds Madelaine and tells her that she has a decision to make. They kiss, and Henri, the groom, and the groomsmen come running out from that house. Gaylord tells Madelaine she needs to make up her mind now as he prepares to launch the balloon. Madelaine decides to go with Gaylord.
Henri takes the gun from a guard, but they weren't prepared for a nuptial shootout, so the gun's not loaded.
Madelaine calls down to Henri, don't shoot, I love you. Is it true, says Henri. Do you really love me?
Madelaine declares that she loves Henri, but then Frenches Gaylord.
The balloon makes its getaway and Henri waves goodbye as Madelaine blows him a kiss. Now we're with Barnum and Tom Thumb, and they're going through a list of potential recruits for their space program. Tom Thumb isn't seeing anyone that fits the bill. Apparently, people aren't lining up for the chance to be launched into space. But Barnum is sure that the right man is out there. After all, he already has the perfect man in mind.
He says that man would be a devoted aide, a former military man, etc., etc., and Tom Thumb is oblivious to the fact that Barnum is describing him.
As you always say, he says, there's one born every minute. Now we're back at the Science Center, and von Bulow is there to demonstrate his latest rocket launcher. Present are the Duke of Barset, Barnum, Dillworthy, and I guess Smythe.
Although we don't see him. He's demonstrating a tabletop version of his helmet cannon. He picks it up and from the meeting room fires out the window at a statue on the grounds. He obliterates it.
But the recoil blows him through the door, leaving a Looney Tunes-style von Bulow-shaped hole. Von Bulow returns to the room. He says that a cannon 500 feet wide will do the trick. Using his method, a 300-foot cannon will do. He has come up with his own explosives, which he calls Bullowite. But von Bulow states that it is impossible to build a cannon of even 300 feet, so what they will have to do is build their cannon into the side of a mountain. This will solve the problem of recoil upon firing the rocket.
He demonstrates this by taking a piece of charred wood from the fireplace and drawing an illustration on the wall of the meeting room. What they'll have to do is blow a cannon-sized hole in the side of a mountain and build it there. And now we go outside where two young women are admiring Captain Sir Harry Washington Smythe's gas carriage.
It's hardly important in the AIP cut version, but this is Anna and Electra.
In the longer version, we find out a lot more about them, including that they're very into science, and one of them is Grundle's sweetheart.
And for the record, Electra, who's not Grundle's sweetheart, is played by Judy Cornwell, who was Chlorine in Whoever Slew Auntie Roo. Anyway, the two of them step outside the Science Center, and they're checking out the gas carriage that's sitting there.
Grundle slides out from under the car perilously close to Anna's skirts and asks her for a spanner, which she gives him. And then he slides back under.
Next to found is Dillworthy, followed by Smythe. Smythe calls after him, but Dillworthy wants nothing to do with Smythe. Dillworthy still believes it was Smythe's fault that the suspension bridge collapsed, and Smythe is nothing but bad luck. But Smythe catches up to Dillworthy and says he merely wanted to offer Dillworthy a ride in his new gas carriage. Dillworthy is intrigued, but he knows that Smythe must have some other motive in mind besides the generous offering of a ride.
And he's right. Smythe wants to grill him about the moonship. On the way back to town, Smythe proposes that Dillworthy help him to get the contract for the moonship, and then they'll split the payment. All's going well until the carriage runs out of gas. So Smythe has Dillworthy push it over to a gas lamp, and Dillworthy shimmies up the pole to siphon off gas for the car.
Dillworthy declares the whole notion of this vehicle as dishonest, but that isn't the point, says Smythe. It's very economical to run.
And now we're on the mountain, getting ready to blow up a hole that we can put that cannon in. The press is there, and Barnum is showing it off. The site was donated by the Duke of Barset, who owns the land. As he's speaking to the press, we see there's a balloon overhead.
Of course, it's the balloon that Gaylord and Madelaine are riding in. Gaylord isn't sure where they are. Madelaine suggests they go down and ask someone, but if they do that, they wouldn't have enough fuel to get back up. Madelaine says she wishes she stayed with Henri. He would take care of her. Gaylord grabs onto her and they embrace. Gaylord says he wishes they were on the ground, so Madelaine grants his wish, releasing enough gas that they go down.
Yep, she waited till he was distracted.
And they go down near where those explosives have been set to blow off the top of the mountain. Gaylord jumps out of the balloon and tries to secure it, but it starts lifting again with Madelaine still on board. Then there's this weird scene where von Bulow is demonstrating some device he's invented where he's kind of a loudspeaker, but when he yells through it, it just plays gibberish. It sounds sped up and backwards, and it doesn't make any sense, and someone else is using it and trying to talk back to him. And of all the stuff the AIP cut, I'm surprised they left this in.
Von Bulow is on the mountain, talking about his explosives, just as von Bulow is preparing to detonate his charges. Barnum tries to stop him, but it's too late, except that the explosion didn't happen as planned. Barnum is relieved, but an enraged von Bulow kicks the faulty detonator, and of course, it works this time. Everyone is thrown to the ground by the blast. It's sort of like a tornado blew through there. Everyone recovers and is alarmed to see the knickerbockered legs of Gaylord kicking the air at the blast's epicenter. But he's okay.
Next we see that the balloon has crashed into the waters. Madelaine manages to make it to shore, but she finds that she's in the middle of nowhere.
She does see a house, though. What happens to her afterwards?
You need to watch the longer cut to know.
Yeah.
Now we're back at the academy, and Dillworthy is addressing everyone. He's presenting a scale model of the rocket that he's designed. He tries to pull the sheet that's covering it, but it's a struggle. When he finally does reveal it, no one seems that impressed.
Although I thought it was kind of cool looking, it was very steampunk.
Dillworthy says it is perfectly designed to send a man to the moon. Gaylord, who has successfully joined this group of scientists, whispers something to Barnum, who then asks Dillworthy how does it bring him back.
Dillworthy grouses that he was asked to build a rocket to send a man to the moon. No one said anything about bringing him back.
But if that's an issue, then the obvious solution is to find a man who doesn't want to come back.
Yeah, if he doesn't like it up there, he can lump it, says Dillworthy.
Barnum assures Dillworthy that General Tom Thumb will insist on coming back. The Duke of Barset says that he can't knowingly send a man to his doom, not even a pauper.
Oh boy, the fact that even crossed his mind. Let's get a poor person.
Barnum asks Dillworthy if he's seen Gaylord's designs. Dillworthy has not, nor does he intend to. In fact, he's so insulted that he leaves the room in a huff. But he still listens at the door as Barnum has Gaylord present his proposal.
Yeah, Dillworthy says it's either his rocket or no rocket. Barnum then tells Gaylord to tell the committee of his plan, which seems to be just as dumb. His ship will have rockets in the head of the ship, after landing on the moon, presumably sticking into it like a pushpin, and then when it's time to go, those rockets will detonate and the ship will be propelled back to Earth. But what I wondered then is, given how much explosives and how wide the cannon is used to detonate them, how much explosives can they fit in the pointy top of a rocket to get it to go back to the Earth?
I think they're not so concerned about preserving the moon as they are the Earth.
They sure didn't care about the Earth because they blasted a giant hole in it. So that's probably not the issue.
Dillworthy rushes back into the room, calling Gaylord a charlatan. But Dillworthy is told that his services are no longer required. So he takes his rocket and goes home. Or at least he goes to Smythe's home. He wants to know why Smythe wasn't at the committee meeting. Dillworthy is seething when he tells Smythe they gave the contract to that damn Yank.
Now Smythe is finally concerned. It's absolutely vital that they get that contract, and that would be by any means necessary, although he doesn't speak the words aloud. And now Barnum is having a progress meeting with Queen Victoria. She's pleased at how much they have in the mission subscription fund and wants to know who'll be riding in the rocket. Barnum is not ready to publicly announce that yet, but Victoria isn't the public, so she wants to know now.
The Duke of Barset says that it will be General Tom Thumb. Excellent, says the Queen, and she will send him correspondence wishing him Godspeed on his journey.
She also says she's commissioned the War Office to give von Bulow all the assistance he needs. And now something goes boom.
Yeah, we're back out in the field, and von Bulow continues blowing things up. He fires his cannon, and the on-duty soldiers working with him have all hit the dirt. They gather themselves, and von Bulow wants to continue the experiments. Only this time, he requests they use double the charge. The warrant officer hesitates, but then cautiously agrees to do as requested.
Now Barnum arrives on site and makes it past a checkpoint. He's heading towards the testing grounds. And now there's a protracted scene of the highly explosive bolivite being inserted into the mouth of a cannon. The unlucky soldier Carruthers gets to push it all the way in the hole. We hear some discordant music, but then he makes it. And then he runs away from the gun.
The warrant officer asks von Bulow what's the next step, but von Bulow isn't sure. He says he's never gotten this far before. He decides next they're going to load the ball. Carruthers is once again enlisted to do so. He gingerly places the ball inside the cannon, and everyone is relieved when the cannon doesn't go off ahead of schedule.
Looks like aside from von Bulow, everyone is expecting the worst here.
The men hide behind the sandbags and light the fuse, just as Barnum comes over the hill looking for von Bulow. Barnum walks over to the cannon and, not seeing anyone around, calls out for von Bulow. "Ja," says von Bulow, peeking out from behind the sandbags.
Barnum doesn't hear him, though, and continues poking around. He even peers into the mouth of the cannon.
Then Barnum notices the burning wick on the ground and asks what he should do about the fire. The warrant officer advises him to put it out, so Barnum starts beating it with his cane. He's successful, and von Bulow comes out to ask why Barnum is here and interfering with his experiments. Barnum tells von Bulow that the committee is growing restless and they've got to start working on building the cannon, but von Bulow hasn't given them the dimensions yet. Von Bulow insists he has to continue his experiments before he will be able to present the information. He invites Barnum to stay and watch the big boom, but Barnum says he's got to be getting back.
Von Bulow talks to his men about resetting the fuse, then slaps the butt of the cannon with his walking stick. There's a mighty explosion that destroys the cannon and buries Barnum in sand, and flattens everybody else. But von Bulow declares this a success.
And Barnum sits up and looks around, and he starts to laugh, so he's none the worse for wear.
I thought that the cannon blasts, every time something explodes in here, it's very cartoonish, because people might get thrown to the ground, but there's no injuries. Maybe they have some soot on their face. But these terrible explosions that should actually damage people never do. And then we cut to Barnum's place. Tom Thumb confronts Barnum with a telegram he received from Queen Victoria, congratulating him on his upcoming trip to the moon. Barnum acts like he's surprised to hear this, and says it's a royal decree and Tom Thumb should be honored, and he's not. He declares that he ain't going.
We do a quick cutaway to a man in black watching von Bulow through binoculars. We'll find out later this is an agent of the Tsar. By now, the warrant officer has a bandage around his head and his arm in a sling, and his uniform has been totally blown off of him. Von Bulow declares that he finally knows the correct amount of Dillworthy necessary for the rocket. The warrant officer is very relieved to hear this.
The other officers bring a stretcher and set it on the ground, and then the warrant officer collapses onto it, and they carry him away.
Back at the academy, Gaylord is going over his new rocket design with Barnum.
He shows off his model, which can accommodate a full-sized human being.
Just then, the Duke of Barset comes in with the news that Smythe has embezzled over 100,000 pounds.
He says it may be unethical, but it was done in a completely legal way, and they can't touch him.
So the Duke is going to go out looking for Smythe, and he finds him in a casino, or something. It's a gambling room.
He's spending his ill-gotten gains there.
The Duke charges at Smythe, but security holds him back. As the Duke is being dragged out, Smythe calls the Duke a traitor, saying that Barnum has bribed him to put the American flag on the moon. And he says that all the Englishmen here will gladly join him in stringing up the Duke.
Barset agrees to leave, and as he's going, Smythe says that he'll place a bet with Barset that rocket will never get off the ground. He even gives him 50-1 odds. And then the other gamblers rush in to get a piece of that action.
Now we're back at the academy, and Madelaine and Henri have been reunited, I guess, because they come in to bid farewell to Gaylord.
I guess a lot happened off screen.
Gaylord says that Madelaine had promised to stay with him until the moonshot, but now that Henri is here, that is not going to happen.
And then Barnum announces to Madelaine and Henri that the project has hit a snag. They don't have enough money to proceed. Madelaine volunteers Henri's money.
Henri is the richest man in France, and he owns 3 banks. 4, corrects Henri. He will lend you the money, says Madelaine. But Barnum isn't looking for a loan. He's looking for private investors. Henri agrees to invest and give Barnum the money on one condition. Gaylord must be on that rocket when it launches.
Now we see Dillworthy going to see Smythe. He's heard that Smythe is taking bets. Smythe tells Dillworthy that now he has over 3,000 pounds, and at 50-1 odds, that's 150,000. If they win. Dillworthy asks if that's wise, and Smythe says, nope. That's why he needs Dillworthy to ensure that something happens to that rocket to prevent the launch. Dillworthy gleefully agrees to sabotage the mission.
So by now the rocket has been built, and there's an exhibition for the rocket as the whole town has come out to see it.
It's in the public square.
Madelaine and Henri are attending.
Henri asks how long the rocket will be on display. Barnum says that it will depend on the firing date of the rocket, which is being determined by an astronomer, and how much tourist revenue the display will generate.
Barnum says he expects around 2 million people at 5 shillings a head to come out and see the rocket.
And we paused the movie and tried to do the math on that, and then when we hit play, we found out that they had already done it for us.
Smythe and Dillworthy are lurking nearby, but they can't do anything about the rocket now. There's too many people around, so we will have to wait until after dark. Next, Barnum brings members of the press in to see the rocket's interior and answer questions like, why is there carpet on the ceiling? Because on the way back down, that will be the floor, explains Barnum.
There's also a plant and a canary on board to see if the moon will support life. So they're going to throw them out there and see if they survive.
And he expects there will be creatures on the moon, creatures beyond the imagination which the public will be most anxious to see on exhibition, and which he'll be happy to provide upon their arrival to the planet Earth.
So he's going to kidnap some moon men, or moon animals,
and put them in his sideshow.
On the upper level of the ship, Gaylord is showing Madelaine the rockets in the nose that will bring the ship back to Earth. Madelaine thinks Gaylord is very brave and kisses him. And then Henri climbs up and asks his fiancée what she's doing. But Gaylord wonders what Henri is doing here.
Henri says he's taking Madelaine back to finish their wedding. But Gaylord says that the rocket isn't launching for months. Henri reminds him that Madelaine promised to stay until the rocket was built, and it is now, so... Gaylord asks Madelaine to have dinner with him tonight as their final night together, and Madelaine accepts. And Henri just stands there helpless.
As she kisses him. This is a weird throuple. And now we have a scene with some characters who are in the original version, but more or less omitted from this cut.
Yeah, Henri is walking alone because Madelaine is hanging out with Gaylord now, and Grundle passes by in tears. Henri looks in the direction from which Grundle came, and he finds Anna sitting on a swing, also in tears. So in the original cut, there's this whole side story of Grundle and Anna as a couple, but they're from different classes, and it's never going to work out. And basically, she just dumped him at this point.
Because they could never marry. And so Henri swoops in, comforts her, and she puts her head on his shoulder. And we see that clearly this is the start of something.
Now we're back at the Academy, and an astronomer, Sir Percival, is determining the best possible launch date for the rocket. He's looking over his papers and says that 4 o'clock p.m. on October the 20th would be perfect. But the problem is that's next Sunday.
Barset asks for the next possible launch date.
The astronomer once again checks his notes and says January the 14th.
Oh, next year, says Barnum.
No, 1968. Barnum thinks there must be some mistake, but Sir Percival says that the moon only comes into the correct position once every 100 years or so.
It's so funny that it's so close to the date of the actual first mission to the moon. Only, a year and a half off?
Barnum is pained when he realizes the rocket won't be around to receive 2 million visitors at 5 shillings a head.
Because they have to do it this Sunday.
That night, we see that Dillworthy and Smythe have snuck on board the rocket. Dillworthy can rig it so instead of launching, it will burrow into the ground and pancake itself. Madelaine is also on the rocket for some reason, and she hears the intruders' conversation. Smythe and Dillworthy head down to confront her. "I heard what you said," says Madelaine. No, we were only joking," says Dillworthy.
Meanwhile, Smythe is locking the door to the ship and grabs a bottle of chloroform, which is on board for reasons unknown. When we next see them, Smythe and Dillworthy are depositing an unconscious Madelaine on the porch of the Holloway Home for Wayward Girls, and they ring the bell.
Dillworthy isn't sure about this, but this seems to be a place that Smythe has made use of before.
Well, when the bell rings, the girls start singing All Things Bright and Beautiful, but once their mistress, Angelica, comes out and sees who's there, she tells them they can cut it out. They don't have to pretend piety anymore.
Angelica says hello to Smythe. Dillworthy introduces himself, and Angelica has them bring Madelaine inside. Dillworthy says that they suspect she'd been drinking. Angelica says it's good that they brought her here then, for her own safety. Dillworthy would like assurance that this is for the best, and Angelica tells him it is.
Meanwhile, Smythe would like assurance that Angelica will not allow Madelaine to go back to her former life. And Angelica takes the hint and says that there's no way Madelaine can escape.
Now it's Saturday, the day before launch day. There's a parade as the rocket is being brought to the launch site, and there are protesters marching with signs.
But only 3, so apparently they're in the minority. They're dragging the rocket like a parade float through the town. Barnum asks Gaylord if he's worried about the trip, and Gaylord says he is, but he's mostly sad that Madelaine chose to go back to France with Henri without waiting for the launch.
Bulow is waiting at the launch site when the moonship finally arrives. It's placed into position, it's put in girders, and there's ropes, and there's a crowd gathered to watch, and Barnum raises his glass in a toast to tomorrow's launch.
Barset tells Gaylord that he's heard the Queen will be coming by to decorate him, and Gaylord wonders why she's deviating from the tradition of waiting for the return of the explorer to decorate him. Barset and Barnum share a glance, but they say nothing. They all fear he's not coming back.
Then Henri arrives with Anna on his arm. Henri announces that Anna has consented to be his wife. Gaylord asks what he's done with Madelaine. Henri says he could ask Gaylord the same question. He hasn't seen Madelaine in a week. But it doesn't matter now, because he's going to marry Anna. But then where is Madelaine? Asks Gaylord. How should I know? Asks Henri.
And somewhere in the background, Grundle is grumbling to Electra, Anna's sister, that Anna has a new guy already. Not that it matters, because they're not really in this movie. Now at the Holloway School for Wayward Girls, we see that Madelaine is about to make a daring escape, using a rope made of sheets tied together. She secures it to her bed and then uses the rope to climb out the window and down to ground level. But as she's descending, she has to hide behind a column to avoid Angelica's lover, who is climbing out of her first floor window.
As Madelaine watches, Angelica hands the man a bag as he bids her farewell. Madelaine falls the final 2 feet to the ground. Angelica and her lover finally see her. "If you make me come back, I'll tell," says Madelaine. Madelaine runs off, and Angelica tells the man to get lost.
In the rocket, Barset and Gaylord do an equipment check. The spacesuit he's wearing looks like a wetsuit that wouldn't even keep him dry if he waded into a lake. And the launching bed looks likely to trap him in it forever with no escape.
It's kind of like a giant clamp that he's supposed to lie in between to hold him in place during the launch.
And there is a lever to release him, but for some reason he couldn't reach it.
Well, it's hard to reach when you're clamped down.
Yeah, you're supposed to keep your arms free so that you can reach the lever.
That's important.
Now we see Smythe and Dillworthy riding in the gas carriage to the rocket site.
Smythe wants them to go on board to ensure that the rigging that Dillworthy did hasn't been discovered and unjiggered. And back at the launch site, Colonel Scuttling of Scotland Yard warns Barnum that they have reason to believe that a spy sent from the Tsar is about.
He may be looking to sabotage the rocket.
The Yard has men in the mountains, but he tells Barnum that he should have his men take extra care in guarding the ship.
And then we see that agent of the Tsar is standing behind a rock, and Scuttling is on the other side of that rock, oblivious to his presence.
Next we see Madelaine is on a train. It stops because the Queen's train is at the station and they have to wait for it to pull out before they're allowed to pull in. But she doesn't have time to wait. She's got to get to the rocket launch, so she jumps out.
Now we're back with Smythe and Dillworthy. His car has run out of gas in a village that has no gas lamps, but he knows what to do.
Inside, a family is singing around the piano. Smythe knocks on their door, telling them that he's from the gas company here for an inspection. He places his holes in their lamp, while outside, Dillworthy pumps gas from the lamp into the gas carriage.
This takes a while, and Smythe has to stand on a ladder by the chandelier while this theft occurs.
The family goes back to singing, and from his post, Smythe joins them, singing the low part.
Coincidentally, Madelaine knocks on their door asking for the family's help at getting her to the moonship. They are going to blow it up, she says. Smythe sees her and says, "Oh, really?" And then Madelaine runs for it.
Smythe jumps into his car with Dillworthy to give chase. They take off with the family's chandelier dragging behind them. They continue to give chase.
Madelaine is on a penny-farthing bicycle at this point.
The chase goes on for a little while.
Then a tractor appears on the road. Madelaine is able to easily get around it, but Smythe has to drive off the road and straight into a stream.
We see they continue their chase, though. Now they're pursuing her by boat, but this boat capsizes.
Well, they're bickering, and that leads to blows, and that leads to tipping themselves into the water.
Back at the launch site, the Duke of Barset is looking for Barnum. He finds him and tells him Her Majesty will be here in 5 minutes. At least Her Majesty is on time, says Barnum. Von Bulow is still preparing the charge. So let's check up on Von Bulow.
We're under the rocket, in the mountain. Von Bulow and his men are rolling the barrels of Bulow into place. They're missing one. Von Bulow goes to look for that last barrel. The man pushing the barrel carelessly drops it, and now it rolls towards a stack of other barrels, full of explosives. They're very careless with this stuff. They manage to save that barrel, but another one falls off the top and hits Von Bulow in the head, and nothing explodes.
Next we see Smythe and Dillworthy on a cliff overlooking the road, waiting for Madelaine to come by. Apparently they're going to push a boulder over her like Wile E. Coyote or something.
Smythe tells Dillworthy, "Don't worry, it's only going to stun her."
When they see her coming by, however, the armed guards of Scotland Yard come up to meet her. Dillworthy thinks that she's going to tell them everything, but Smythe isn't ready to give up just yet.
The guards put Madelaine on a horse, so she's no longer on a bicycle, and at first I thought they were going to help her. We'll find out later that there's more to that story.
Back at the launch site, the royal band is playing a fanfare as the Queen arrives. She puts a medal around Gaylord's neck and wishes him bon voyage.
She's got one for P.T. Barnum, too. And Gaylord sneezes at her, and she waves his germs away. I thought that was funny. It's now 6 minutes to launch.
Madelaine is brought in by the armed guards to Colonel Scuttling, and they all believe they've caught the Russian saboteur.
Right, they're not going to listen to her story because they've already decided that she's guilty. Scuttling plans to question her for as long as it takes to get a confession.
Now it's time for Gaylord to enter the moonship.
It's 2 minutes to launch.
Barnum wishes him luck, and Gaylord looks back one last time before closing the door behind him. Then he sneezes.
I think he was looking for Madelaine.
Madelaine is being interrogated by Scuttling. He speaks gibberish to her and says, "You claim to be French, yet you didn't understand me."
I think he just threw some random French words at her, and while she understood the words, she didn't understand why he was trying to test her with this nonsense.
"I don't understand any of you," she says. "You're all mad." Dillworthy and Smythe are watching this from nearby. It appears she hasn't told them yet about their plan to blow up the rocket.
Because the launch is about to happen. Inside the rocket, Gaylord can't stop sneezing. Madelaine breaks free. Gaylord is strapped in for launch, but when the top of the bed comes down, his arm gets accidentally trapped inside it.
The countdown says 15 seconds and counting. Madelaine runs toward the rocket, but she stops when she hears how close the launch is. Scotland Yard has reached her, but everyone stops what they're doing to watch the launch. Madelaine runs to Barnum.
She tells him about the plot to sabotage the rocket, and both of them run towards the ship, but it's too late. They're at the 3, 2, 1 blast-off part of the countdown.
But nothing happens. Inside the moonship, Gaylord's arm is still pinned down and he can't access the lever to trigger the launch. Then the agent of the Tsar comes from the hatch below. "What is it? Is something wrong?" he asks. "Who are you?" asks Gaylord. "Agent of the Tsar," he said. "Oh, I forgot. I'm not supposed to tell."
Oops.
He goes over to where that bottle of chloroform is lying, and the handkerchief next to it.
Then he pours it on. Since the rocket didn't launch, Barnum and Madelaine race towards it and go inside to release an unconscious Gaylord and take him out.
From their hiding place, Dillworthy and Smythe declare their victory. The moonship will never launch now. Its main operator is unconscious.
But Smythe wants a closer look, so he and Dillworthy run towards the rocket. Outside the rocket, Barnum orders that Gaylord be revived and asks his men to fix the rocket.
Inside, Smythe and Dillworthy start pulling hoses and destroying levers. The agent of the Tsar opens the hatch, and climbs up to the pilot area and assumes Gaylord's position on that launch bed. He reaches for the lever and he launches the moonship.
The rocket drops down into the shaft, and then great balls of fire, as P.T. Barnum says.
Everyone looks up at the sound of the explosion. The rocket starts burrowing into the ground. Barnum warns everyone to get down, then another explosion sends the rocket launching into the air.
Barnum's under the impression that there's not a soul on board.
It's gone along with the $10 million price tag.
Henri and Anna appear. Madelaine sees them and goes to reclaim her former fiancé. Grundle takes the opportunity to run up and grab Anna. But this tug-of-war ends once coal starts to rain down on everyone.
Since the Duke of Barset owns this mountain, it's all his and he's rich. And it's enough to build another moonship.
And for whatever reason, Barnum's also celebrating his new wealth. Or maybe just the fact that all that money wasn't for nothing. Anyway, hooray.
Elsewhere, we see the rocket is being pulled by a bunch of men, including Smythe and Dillworthy.
They're at the head of this procession. The agent of the Tsar is cracking the whip on the gang to keep them moving.
Smythe blames Dillworthy for this. They'll have to spend the rest of their days with these filthy moon men. Dillworthy argues that they're not on the moon, they're probably in Siberia. But it really doesn't matter anyway. The other men start singing in Russian, so Dillworthy asks Smythe to explain that. It simply means the Russians got there first, he says.
The men keep bickering as they drag the rocket into the credits, and that's the end. This is the American International Podcast, and we're talking about Those Fantastic Flying Fools from 1967.
Those Fantastic Flying Fools was very loosely based on the 1865 novel From the Earth to the Moon by Jules Verne, while the script was by Dave Freeman, a comedy writer for The Benny Hill Show. Don Sharp, who directed the film, said Freeman's original script was glorious, which encouraged Towers to make an all-star film with actors like Thomas, Price, Gingold, etc.
Those Fantastic Flying Fools was at some point called Journey That Shook the World and P.T. Barnum's Rocket to the Moon. But in April of 1967, Jack Ward's Hollywood column reported that the Troy Donahue Burl Ives movie made in Ireland last year gets a new and fifth title, Those Fantastic Flying Fools. But Robert Sylvester, in his Dream Street column, published April 15, 1967, predicted that it would get several more.
The film was almost entirely shot in Ireland starting August 6, 1966. The rocket launch was shot at the site of a disused copper mine in Avoca in County Wicklow, and other exterior scenes were shot in the sand dunes of Britis Bay, and the interior scenes were shot at Ardmore Studios just south of Dublin. Bing
Crosby was originally cast as Phineas T. Barnum, and Senta Berger was supposed to play Madelaine. Also, Wilfred Hyde-White was cast as Sir Charles Dillworthy. Lionel Jeffries replaced Hyde-White, and Burl, Ives, and Daliah Lavi stood in for Crosby and Berger, as we know. But can you imagine Bing Crosby as Barnum? I can't.
According to director Don Sharp in an interview recorded for the British History Project, BFI, Those Fantastic Flying Fools was Harry Alan Towers' most expensive film. The film had a budget of $3 billion, but Towers approached several international film studios, all of whom planned to release the film in their home countries in an attempt to obtain more funds. This included AIP. It seems the bids worked, but in exchange, producers like Nat Cohen and Sam Arkoff asked Towers to give more screen time to those studio stars like Gert Frobe, Terry Thomas, and Troy Donahue. This resulted in a longer runtime from a formerly tight script. Sharp said that cutting those added scenes would have left big holes in the story.
And he was right. Box Office Magazine called Those Fantastic Flying Fools American International's biggest and most expensive film to date. In an interview published in Charles McCary's syndicated On the Town column in June of 1967, AIP studio head James H. Nicholson said that the film could have been more expensive had it been shot in Hollywood, $4 million more expensive. McCary wrote that Dublin has now become the least expensive film locale in the world.
Alan Ward in the Oakland Tribune wrote that Nicholson, speaking at a press luncheon in San Francisco, said he wanted to elevate AIP's reputation as a low-budget, lowbrow studio to one that produced more artistic films. He spoke mainly about a planned feature about the Marquis de Sade, but also said that Those Fantastic Flying Fools would provide AIP with some of its desired prestige status.
Shirley Eder, in her Name-Dropping on TV column, published in early June 1967, wrote that Troy Donahue won $280 in the Irish Sweepstakes lottery while filming Those Fantastic Flying Fools.
The film debuted in Los Angeles on July 26, 1967, as Those Fantastic Flying Fools. However, the film was not the hit that AIP was expecting, so they cut the film down to 95 minutes and retitled the film Blast Off for release in other parts of the country. By September 28, 1967, the film was being screened under both titles, depending on where the movie was showing. It premiered in the UK under the title Jules Verne's Rocket to the Moon on July 13, 1967.
Troy Donahue went on a 10-city tour in June of 1967 to promote Those Fantastic Flying Fools. In Richmond, Virginia, he advised the assembled young people, mostly teenage girls, that if they wanted to be actors, they should go to college first. He said, don't try to be an actor. Be yourself first. Get an education, then study acting.
While signing autographs in Petersburg, Virginia, a reporter for the Progress Index asked Donahue what he thought of hippies. I think they're disgusting, he said. Every one of them should be put in the army. He further commented that long hair was only for girls and that college students had the right to protest as long as there is no misconduct and they don't incite violence.
Box Office said theater owners should create an exhibit highlighting the exploits of P.T. Barnum and suggested using skywriting to create interest in the film. Other suggestions included using a miniature balloon advertising campaign or building a mock rocket for the theater lobby. Taglines for Those Fantastic Flying Fools include, join those fantastic flying fools for a high old time.
Madcap comedy of the first time they tried to shoot a rocket to the moon in 1875.
The laughs are sky high.
The most fabulous entertainment event of the year.
We also found an advertisement published in the Jackson, Mississippi Clarion Ledger on June 30th, 1967, that had the following text under the title. So new that the advertising material is not available, but it's as good as any Walt Disney picture. The New York Times' Bosley Crowther said of the film, it seems to have been inspired by those magnificent men and their flying machines, which in its turn had been more than a little inspired by Michael Todd's extravagant version of Verne's Around the World in 80 Days. The inspiration is now running somewhat thin. The producers of this colorful rehash, however, have had the intelligence, if not exactly the originality, to hire Terry Thomas and Gert Frobe to carry the comic burden. It's all been done before and better, but there are still some smiles left in the sight of Mr. Frobe, unwittingly preparing a disastrous new experiment with his rocket explosives.
Box Office reviewed Those Fantastic Flying Fools and wrote, produced by Harry Alan Towers, who has seen fit to fill every role with a perfectly cast performer, this period piece, which is more comedy than science fiction adventure, should be a box office hit in the general market.
Ken Bernard of the Detroit Free Press said, Those Fantastic Flying Fools was beautifully mounted with excellent color photography and handsome sets, but the picture unfortunately has a plot that never quite gets off the ground. The movie, which should crackle with wit at the expense of eager science, merely sputters like a fuse in futile quest of a charge.
Carol Cass of the Richmond Times-Dispatch said there wasn't enough Troy Donahue in Those Fantastic Flying Fools to satisfy his legion of local fans, and that but the trouble is that it is not original but rather derivative of other better pictures. The comedy is heavy-handed and overdone. It is innocuous, pleasant, and inoffensive, but only mildly amusing.
Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times wrote, Burl Ives gives a curiously straight, understated performance for such foolish surroundings. Troy Donahue, as the astronaut designer, performs as if he were being sculpted at the same time. Of the film, he wrote, Those Fantastic Flying Fools takes its time, which is risky in a slapstick enterprise. Still, it does retain an easy, sauntering tone of amiable nonsense, with enough pratfalls and explosions spaced around to keep the small fry happy.
We did find some reviews in British papers of Jules Verne's Rocket to the Moon, which is about 20 minutes longer than Those Fantastic Flying Fools and thus a different viewing experience. One that Paul Bracegirdle of the Bolton News called a slow, slow trip to the moon and said it was billed as a no-holds-barred extravaganza of fast-moving action. It isn't. Nothing like. In the film, time dragged so much that I kept shaking my watch to see if it was still going.
Michael Billington, writing for the British newspaper The Times, panned Jules Verne's Rocket to the Moon, saying, Inspired by Jules Verne, the credits for the film rather cryptically announce. One can't argue with the credits, of course, but a more instantly recognizable inspiration is that brand of screen comedy that assumes that a large gathering of well-known names, plus some vintage piece of machinery, a car for preference but a plane or rocket will do, adds up to irresistible mirth. But as this film takes nearly 2 hours to demonstrate, it's no use cramming the cast with comedy actors if you're not going to give them anything very funny to do. I'm not sure which version of the movie to ask you about, but I guess we should talk about the 95-minute version, the official AIP release. What are your thoughts on the movie?
It's really kind of strange having seen both versions because the stuff that was missing was noticeably missing. A lot of times if you see a movie that's cut, you don't really miss what's missing, but there were characters referencing things that happened that had been cut in the 95-minute version that appeared in the longer version. And while it wasn't the meat of the story, that's all there. It might have been a lot of the more interesting elements in the film that were missing.
I thought so, because I do remember a scene where Anna and Electra demonstrate their love of science They want to invent an elevator in their home, and they do it with explosives and pulleys and levers. And at one point we see Anna hanging by her ankle from a rope on a pulley. And then we see more of her romance with Grundle. And I just thought it was a great scene with two women in this very male-centered movie, just showing that they also enjoyed science. And it gave us more backstory on Anna and Grundle having a romance, which does not appear anywhere in this movie. I think the first scene that we have with Anna and Grundle, she doesn't kiss him like she does in the longer version. So we know right away that theirs is a romance. Perhaps a forbidden one, but a romance nonetheless.
Yeah, in the short version, their relationship isn't even alluded to. It's shown on occasion. We see Grundle crying when he's dumped, and we see him getting angry when she's with Henri.
It's the aftermath, but not the before math.
Or the during.
Or the during. And I did miss that part. And I think we missed some scenes with Madelaine, too. After she crashes into the water, we have no idea what happens to her.
No, she just shows up with Henri later. But there's this whole bit where she's taken in and she's staying at somebody's house. I think it was Barnum, but I'm not even sure. I don't remember.
But by the time we see her again, they know each other. Whereas in the cut version, they've never met. And he has no reason to be familiar with her and vice versa. So I think that was a miss. However, well, I kind of nodded off during the really long version, but that was too long. There was stuff that could be cut in that they didn't cut. A lot of goofing around with testing the cannon.
Yeah, there was a lot missing from that. There was a whole bit with Carruthers being blown up more than once.
It was a recurring bit with him.
Right. And that was all cut. So he's reacting to being chosen once again in the AIP version, but we've never seen him being chosen before in the AIP version.
I just don't know that the way they left it was beneficial, because we just see him testing the same cannon over and over again. And it's not funny. And it doesn't really move the plot along that well.
No, but as I said, they left the meat of the plot. The whole point of getting the rocket together is all there, and all the side stuff isn't. But again, some of that side stuff was just more interesting.
The stuff with the characters, not with the explosions.
Right.
But I guess the explosions were deemed to be funny and thus worth keeping.
So I think the AIP version is actually hurt by the cuts, even though the original cut is much too long. So there's got to be kind of a even middle there that everyone missed.
Maybe one day someone will put it together and make a cohesive movie out of it, and then we can watch that. I doubt it, though.
The title the AIP chose, Those Fantastic Flying Fools, is an obvious play on those magnificent men on their flying machines, for which the director of Fantastic Flying Fools, Don Sharp, was a second unit director on those magnificent men.
I don't think it was his idea, though.
No, I just thought it was coincidental. And also Terry Thomas, Gert Frobe, and Graham Starke all appear in both films.
So it is more than derivative. It's basically trying to rip it off. In the public's mind, they're going to associate the two movies because they have so much in common.
Yeah, and I think that maybe even the British version, Rocket Ship to the Moon, would have had that as well, even though it wasn't as obvious as AIP tried to lay it down with them almost swapping the exact same title. But I think they might be seen as kind of sister films, even if one is obviously more inferior than the other.
Well, what about Blast Off as a title? It's so basic.
It is. I think I like it better. It's easier to say.
True.
A lot easier to remember.
I had trouble pronouncing Those Fantastic Flying Fools when we were reading the production info. So yeah, it's a bit much. However, when I was doing the research for this and I looked through old newspapers, just searching the words Blast Off gives you a whole raft of articles that are not about this movie. A lot about the space race, a lot of sports articles that use this as a metaphor for hitting a baseball or whatever. So that made it harder to get information on that version of the movie, looking for reviews and such.
So as I said, Don Sharp directed Those Fantastic Flying Fools, or rather Rocket Ship to the Moon, which was released as Those Fantastic Flying Fools. He also directed a couple other films released by AIP, Bang Bang You're Dead and Hennessy, both which we have yet to feature on the podcast, and both very different types of films.
What is Bang Bang You're Dead? I know about Hennessy.
Bang Bang You're Dead is also known as Our Man in Marrakesh.
Spy movie?
It's a spy movie with Tony Randall.
Oh, wow. Give me a sec to imagine how that goes.
So we'll get to that one of these days.
Can't wait.
He also directed a few films for Hammer. He did Kiss of the Vampire, Rasputin the Mad Monk, and To the Devil a Daughter. So he's not an incompetent director.
No, I don't think so. Well, we read that he was forced to add more scenes to get more money. And so that's where it started to get really clunky. But when they had to go back and cut it, whoever cut it, I don't think it was sharp. It was probably the hatchet men at AIP, just took stuff out willy-nilly without considering the story and establishing characters before we have them part of the action.
Right. They kept everything regarding the rocket getting built, and probably stuff that they didn't even need to. The scenes of Von Bulow testing his explosives, they happen throughout the film, and they're not very different.
Mm-mm. Yeah, that's what I said.
They're very repetitive.
They just keep doing the same thing over and over again. One scene would have sufficed. We could have seen Carruthers getting blown up again and again, and thus his great hesitation to keep participating. But yeah, there was too much of that. It's hard to tell how much time is passing when all these preparations are being made.
It's also hard to tell when so much is cut out. When Madelaine reaches the shore and disappears for the next 20 minutes of the film and then just appears out of nowhere, you're like, oh yeah, her. But there was a whole bunch of stuff in the long version in which she was included that was just cut out. And I guess AIP felt it didn't matter.
Was there more at the Holloway School for Girls? Besides her being dropped off and then escaping?
I don't think so.
Good, because it didn't look like it was going to be a very comedic situation.
Yeah, I didn't take notes on the long version, so I only know what I remember.
I just remember that it seemed to go on forever.
It was a long movie, which is another reason why we decided to track down the shorter version, because not only was it the appropriate theatrical version for our project, it also took us less time to watch it.
And take notes. True. Yeah, because I think just cutting those women out of the film, well, just for my own personal enjoyment, I like to see movies that include women as real characters and not just arm candy. And this movie did kind of reduce some interesting characters to love objects, emphasis on the object.
Yeah, it's certainly not unheard of for AIP to do hatchet jobs on these foreign films that they acquire.
But they wanted this to be a prestige movie. Didn't seem very prestigious.
I mean, even going back to Black Sunday, the two cuts of the movie are very different, but both are well regarded in that case, probably due to director Mario Bava more than anything else. And in this case, I don't think that Blastoff or Those Fantastic Flying Fools would be very well regarded. But I could see maybe, despite the length, some people saying that Rocket Ship to the Moon has some merits.
Well, like we said, since we watched both, we have the benefit of knowing what was cut and filling in the blanks. But the people who watched just the shorter version were probably a little baffled at who these characters were. So, yeah.
Right, the scene where Grundle's just walking by in tears, and we probably wouldn't even remember him from that first scene he was in with the billiard table.
No, or him under the car.
Right. And you just see a guy crying and then a woman crying, and we can deduce, okay, something happened between them. But in the longer version, we actually know what happened between them, and we know who these people are. Here, they're just people in the background.
And they couldn't even cut that scene, though, because that's why Henri left Madelaine. And that was apparently important.
Was it, though? I mean, he could have shown up with Anna at the end, and we wouldn't have known who she was, but would we care? He just found another woman.
Yeah, you're right.
It probably would have played just about the same.
Yeah, that's true. I guess they wanted to paint it as an actual romance and not just him out collecting anyone to fill the Madeleine-shaped void in his life.
Yeah, I'm all for them cutting this film down a little bit. I just don't necessarily agree with the cuts that they made.
Right. I think that the fact that this was billed as better than Disney in one paper and slapstick fare that the small fry will enjoy meant that they were really focusing on the simple aspects of the story. The explosions, the rocket blasting off, the chase scenes, which were too long, I think. But I think they were longer in the original, though. I think
so too, yeah.
I think there was more to that chase on the penny farthing bike. Even so, it got kind of tedious. But yeah, they were really pitching this as a family film and not an adult comedy. The first time I watched this, I was reminded of some Monty Python sketches because it seemed like a bunch of loosely connected sketches at first. But then as it sort of wore on, it seemed like something completely different.
It starts out really funny when they're showing Queen Victoria and everything she touches turns to rot.
Yeah, she never considered that she's the common denominator in all these disasters.
And Duke of Barset's house and the bridge over the Trent.
Yeah, the entire thing collapsed. If only someone else had cut that ribbon. But in a movie with hardly any women, at least we had her. I can't imagine, I know I'd said this before, but I thought Burl Ives did a great job. I don't know how wacky he was supposed to be playing P.T. Barnum, but I thought he did a great job, and he was a very sympathetic and likable character, unlike a lot of the other characters in this movie.
Yeah, I liked him as Barnum.
He's just likable.
It's interesting to think the number of times the character of Barnum has been used in a movie or a story.
Well, I guess if Hugh Jackman can do it, then Bing Crosby could have done it.
I think Bing Crosby could have done this.
I don't know. Burl Ives is so much more twinkly.
He's jovial.
Yeah, and Bing Crosby strikes me as a man who's angry all the time, but just hides it well. And I don't think that would have worked for this role. We needed somebody really amiable. Somebody in this movie has to be likable. Troy Donahue's character was annoying at best.
Yeah, not much personality there.
Very straight-laced. Although in 1875, I can see why you wouldn't be thrilled about your girlfriend marrying somebody else and still wanting to have you around. But the way he expresses that is very moral majority of him. A lot of pearl clutching.
Even today, it's still a weird relationship.
Well, if it works for people, I guess it's fine.
It wasn't working for any of them, except maybe Madelaine.
Well, she eventually chased one of her guys away.
Yeah, it should have happened much sooner.
I guess she's just that amazing that they'll put up with anything to have her, even part-time. Maybe it was funnier back when people first saw it in the 60s. I don't know. It was amusing at best, and for the most part, it was just kind of there. I didn't get a lot of laughs out of it, did you?
It had its moments. I don't think it was ever laugh out loud funny, but it was that British humor that is sometimes cute to Americans, I guess.
Well, if the scriptwriter worked for the Benny Hill show, I mean, that makes it make sense, I guess. It almost has like a Three Stooges quality to it. When you look at the Dillworthy-Smythe relationship, they're always at odds with each other. And it does come to physical violence, at least physical fighting occasionally. But that's not funny. I don't find Benny Hill funny.
Well, there was that one shot where the balloon is taking off with Madelaine and Gaylord on board, and Henri is waving goodbye, and the guard behind him starts waving goodbye too. Realizes this is not my place, and sheepishly puts his hand back down.
Okay, I did laugh at that. That was funny. That was like a cute moment.
And that was in both cuts.
It almost looked improvised, but probably not. But it was an oasis in a sea of unfunny.
Well, it started out funny.
Yeah, it did.
It started out strong.
I had
and
high
then
hopes.
it got dragged down in the plot is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It took way too long to build this rocket.
Way too long to launch it. But at least they didn't wait till 1968. They still have been waiting when the movie came out. All right. We've said a lot about this movie, but we haven't said it via our rating system, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic. Give this movie a letter grade, Jeff.
Well, this one's a little tougher because we did watch two versions of the movie. And I do think that the longer version is stronger, but it's also the longer version, which means it's too long. But the short version has so much cut out that stuff doesn't even make sense. You don't miss it if you don't know it's supposed to be there, but it certainly doesn't help the film at all. I'm going to give this one an I. It's definitely not the worst thing I've seen, but it's got a long way to go to be an A. So it's an intermediate grade for me. How about you, Cheryl? What is your grade for this one?
I think we're about to agree again, because while there is a lot good going on in this movie, and it's not a bad way to spend an hour and a half or even 2 hours watching this movie, it just could have been so much better. There's so much potential here. It's a great cast. It's a pretty cute story. I didn't see those magnificent men in their flying machines, so I accept that it is derivative of that. But for me, this was the only thing I've seen, so I can't compare it. And I think with a good edit, bring back more from the original story, cut a little bit from what ended up in the AIP cut, I think you could maybe get closer to A, but they didn't do that, and so I give it an I too.
Yeah, I don't think they have the ingredients to make it an A, no matter what they cut or leave in.
No, but you'd be a lot closer. I would be a little more ambivalent about giving it the middle grade. You have to go back to
production and just take out some of the monotonous stuff and add some more fun stuff. And this could be an A. It's a good story. It's a cute idea. There's potential there. It's just not very well executed.
No, I agree.
So to find out how we graded other films in the AIP catalog, you can visit our website to hear our podcast episodes. Our website is aippod.com. And while there, you can watch trailers for the films that we reviewed. The posters and lobby cards are there. And you can find out where you can stream the movies to watch them for yourselves. There's also a link to our store, and a purchase there will help us to bring the content to the podcast and the website. And we also have a list of films that we're looking for that we'd like to feature on the podcast, but have been difficult for us to track down. So if you have any lines on where we could find some of these films, just check it out on the Help Us tab on our website, AIPpod.com.
And after this high-flying adventure, it's time to come back down to earth. For the American International Podcast, I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in.
Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.